My name's Dave. I'm one of the leaders here at Grace Church, and I want to wish you a very warm welcome and a very happy Christmas. And I guess saying happy Christmas at this time of year, when it's a few weeks away still, is as much a hope as it is as just a saying, isn't it? Everybody's hoping for a happy Christmas, and in fact, you can't help but hope for Christmas. You can't help but find within yourself tinglings of hope, can you? Maybe you're hoping for great Christmas presents or great Christmas family get-togethers, or you're just hoping for a great Christmas special of Gavin and Stacey on Christmas Day. And even if you're somebody who deeply dislikes Christmas, you can't stop hoping either. It's just that your hopes have a kind of slightly more pessimistic tinge to them, don't they? You hope that the nativity that you have to go to doesn't drag on for too long. It might be that you're hoping the carol service you've been dragged to this evening doesn't go on for too long. Or you're hoping that the trip to Grandma's doesn't go on for as long as you are fearful that it might go on for. Or you're just hoping that the turkey isn't as dry as it has been in previous years. But I can't help but, when I think about hope and I think about hoping, I can't help but recall a story that I read as a teenager, and it was one of those kind of books that I read and kind of got seared in my imagination. A book by Terry Pratchett called Going Postal, and he tells the story at the beginning of the book of a guy called Moist von Litvig, which is a very weird name. And Moist is in a prison cell, and he's in a lot of trouble. And in order to deal with the trouble that he's in and the prison cell he's in, he has managed to steal a small silver spoon which he was given to eat his food with. And at night, in the kind of dead of darkness, he has chipped away at the mortar around one of the huge stones that makes up the prison wall that he's found himself in. He's chipped away so much mortar that he's had to hide it in his food and eat it, or he's hidden it in his bedding. And then one night, he's made enough progress that as it's dark and quiet, he has slowly heaved out this huge stone from the side of the wall, as quietly as he can, placed it on the bed behind him, and then looked at the hole through which he hopes to escape, to see behind it is another huge stone, immaculately mortared into place, and sitting in front of it is a shining silver spoon. He looks at the tiny stub of a spoon that he now has in his hands that's been worn away by the work he's had to do, and he hears laughter behind him. He turns around and he sees at the prison gates all of the guards laughing at his expense. His shoulders just sag and he goes, "Well, that was a bit mean, wasn't it?" And the leader of the prison guards goes, "No, we gave you the greatest of all gifts, hope." The greatest of all gifts, hope. Is that really what hope is? Is it that powerful a thing that it's the greatest of all gifts? How many of us at Christmas, in the midst of everything that's going on, might hope not for great big presents or for anything grand, but in the midst of all of the chaos, we find ourselves hoping for just a little bit of peace? Or even if it doesn't feel like your diary and your calendar is bringing chaos into your life, you find yourself hoping not just for a peace in your circumstances, but at least for a little bit of peace in your heart. That the feelings and the anxiety, the FOMO and everything else that comes with Christmas, we want a little bit of peace for. Well, hope and peace is what we're going to think about for a few minutes this evening. Because I think hope and peace is why those readings that we have read this evening have struck so many chords with so many people in so many places over the years. Each year, millions of people will come to meetings like this one and take great solace in the words that we just heard read to us, of a story of shepherds in a field at night and appearing to them angels. And those shepherds were probably not hoping for the kind of optimistic hopes that you and I might have at Christmas. They're probably not even hoping for the pessimistic hopes that you and I might have at Christmas. These were shepherds who were pretty low in the societal order that they found themselves living in, but they also not only found themselves living low in the societal order, they found themselves living in a low society. A group of people who had a really great history behind them and a kind of great pride about where they were, but they were living under a great deal of oppression at the time and occupying forces. They were at a low ebb, their society and as individual people. And into their life comes a shining angel saying, "Fear not, behold, I bring you good news of great joy. Unto you a child is born in the city of David, who is Christ the Lord." And then suddenly there's loads of angels around in front of them. And they're singing, "Glory to God in the highest, on highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased. And it might be that you hear a story like that and you strike, there's two kinds of unbelievable about that story though, aren't there? The first is that it's just difficult to believe in angels appearing in the night sky to nobody. Well, to apparent nobodies anyway. And whilst that is difficult to believe, I think we need to, well, imagine this. Imagine you had a friend who was saying to you that what they were hoping for this Christmas was something that they ended up receiving. Whether it's like a gift they desperately hoped for, or a relationship that they desperately hoped for, or just an opportunity they desperately hoped for. And then when that very thing came along, they then found themselves saying to you, I just can't believe it's actually here though. And you'd find yourself going, what do you mean? You've been hoping for this all along. Of course it's now here. You've got to grab it with both hands. Well then, okay, how many of us at some stage of Christmas, in the middle of festivities, or just at some stage in our lives, have found ourselves longing for, hoping for something transcendent, something extraordinary, something of God breaking into the mundanity and the normality of life? And here, as these angels appear, we find ourselves reading exactly that. God breaking into our quiet and ordinary world. And as difficult as it might be to believe, it's worth giving at least a minute to, though, isn't it? Because actually, in so many ways, that's what we've been longing for. If we've ever found ourselves longing for something transcendent, something bigger than just we are. But hold on, there might be another thing that makes this difficult to believe, and that is what the angels say when they say peace on earth. And you might go, peace on earth? Are you kidding? 2,000 years of human history have passed since these things were written down, and the phrase I would not use to sum up those 2,000 years of human history has been peace on earth. What does it mean? Well, the word that you and I read when we read peace there is a very deep word. There's a lot going on in it. It could be translated peace, it could be translated prosperity, it could be translated as welfare. And the problem is that any of those words doesn't really sum up everything that the angels are saying when they say peace, because they all come with connotations that you and I understandably put on them, but aren't really mixed in with what the angel is saying. One translator said that a way of summing up that kind of peace is to go, it is the perfect, harmonious interdependence among all parts of the world. The perfect, harmonious interdependence among all parts of the world. That is a kind of thing that we would hope for, isn't it? But the problem is the word peace doesn't sum that up, because when we think of peace, we think of being left alone. And that's not interdependence. And the word prosperity doesn't sum that up either, because it's impossible, basically, for us to imagine a kind of prosperity that doesn't come along with inequality at the same time, and of some people being raised higher and some people being shoved lower. And it's impossible for us to think of that when we think of welfare either, because we don't tend to think of just faring well. When we think of welfare, we think of being on welfare or the welfare state. But perfect, harmonious interdependence among all parts of the world, that is what these angels say is coming into the world when they meet with these shepherds. And whatever you find yourself hoping for this Christmas, longing for, I think all of us on some level could say that is something that's worth hoping for, worth longing for. Whether you feel as kind of that you have the place in society where, like a shepherd does, in a very back end of nowhere kind of place in the world, or whether you feel that you're a few rungs higher than that at the very least. Perfect, harmonious interdependence, isn't that something that's worth longing for? Well, we're going to hear the band perform for us a song that speaks about how that longing is met in the Christmas message tonight. As they come up and sing, this is a performance song, so do feel free to hold on to your seats and enjoy it as the band lead us in this, and then I'll come back up after they're done.
Oh, is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Oh, come, bitter and broken, come with fears unspoken, come, taste of his perfect love. Oh, come, guilty and hiding ones, there is no need to run. See what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. He's the Lamb who was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. He's the Lamb who was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. So come, though you have nothing, come. He is the offering. Come, see what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you.
The perfect, harmonious interdependence among all parts of the world. The thing is that that kind of peace is very difficult to achieve. In fact, it's so difficult to achieve that it can't be achieved by small changes to individual people or even big changes to a society. It needs to be changed by something utterly extraordinary. One of the first ever Christian theologians, a guy called Augustine, put it like this. He said, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until we find rest in you." We will never find peace until we find peace in the one who we've been made to find peace in. But a challenge that you and I face is that the common Christmas Kool-Aid that you and I drink most days is subtly but importantly different from that. Christmas is a great time of year for rating things, isn't it? Whether you're the family that rates the different chocolates in a selection box, or you kind of watch all the TV shows that rate the best movies of the year and the best songs of the year. In the last couple of years, I've got into doing my own personal rankings of the Christmas adverts each year and saying which ones I think really cut the mustard or not, as I kind of just go to a YouTube rabbit hole of various different Christmas adverts. In case you're interested, this year, my kind of cuteness award would go to Barber and their Shaun the Sheep advert. But I thought the most kind of pertinent one was Tesco, of all kind of people, like kind of the massive brand. But last year, something really interesting happened. Long after all of the massive advertising campaigns had gone on in kind of various Christmas adverts, a small pub in the town of Enniskillen in Ireland made their own Christmas advert, just filmed on a phone, very low budget, very low strings. And it told the story of an old man in the town who experienced loneliness kind of becoming real to him as he walked around at Christmas time. And you saw him walking through the town, and he'd see a family playing in the playground, and he became aware of how on his own he was. Or he'd walk past a couple who were walking their dog and be aware of how he was on his own and they were together. And then eventually he walks through Enniskillen far enough that he gets to Charlie's bar. He wanders into Charlie's bar and orders a pint and sits down at the table. And then, a few moments later, the couple who had walked past him with their dog earlier on, walk into the bar behind him. They order a couple of drinks, they sit down on the table next to him, and through something or other, they strike up a conversation. And the mood gets warmer and the music gets more cheerful. And you hear the message, hey, you don't need to be lonely this Christmas, you can go to Charlie's bar. But do you see what it's saying? It's saying how so many things are said to us at Christmas, that if we can just pull together, if we can put aside our differences, if we can be a little bit better to each other, then we really could bring about peace on earth. But that's not what these passages that we've been reading have been saying to us. Bob Dylan, after he appeared on the very first Live Aid and Band Aid song, said, I was very uncomfortable doing it the day afterwards. And he told an interviewer, why? Why were you uncomfortable? And he said, because man cannot save himself. There is a problem, and we all have a need for a solution to that problem, and it cannot come from us ourselves. And that is why the Christmas story offers us the greatest of all gifts, hope. Because it does not offer us the chance of hope that might come from manipulative jail guards offering us a way to fight our way out of the problems that we find ourselves in. The Christmas story is a message of God himself breaking through the wall of our prison cell, entering into our world, that this tiny baby that these angels are singing about coming to these shepherds in the middle of nowhere is God himself come to live amongst us, come to offer us hope and peace by giving us the greatest of all gifts, by giving us himself. But if you remember that phrase and you're thinking about it tomorrow, you might actually find yourself thinking that is a bit twee. The greatest of all gifts, giving us himself. That sounds like the family member who forgets to get you a present at Christmas and so says, I'm going to give you a hug for Christmas. But the reason you can know that the greatest of all gifts really is God himself, you can learn from Home Alone 2. That's a family tradition in our house, is to watch Home Alone 2 whilst wrapping presents. We did it earlier today, in fact. And the reason that Home Alone 2 teaches you that lesson is because at the end of Home Alone 2, and spoiler alert here, but it's a 30-year-old film, I'm not sure if I really need to say spoiler alert. At the end of Home Alone 2, Kevin, the 8-year-old star of the show, receives two things. He's reunited with his family, and he receives an enormous pile of presents under his Christmas tree donated by the owner of a toy store. And when that happens, which of the two things does he hug? It's not the presents under the tree, it's his mother who he holds on to. You see, the person is always greater than the gift. And that means that the greatest of all gifts would be the greatest of all people. And if you believe that to be true, then the words we heard read earlier from Isaiah chapter 9 hit like a sledgehammer. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This truly is the greatest of all people, and therefore it is the greatest of all gifts. That our longing for peace is answered by this tiny baby born in the middle of nowhere to people who had, in many ways, no idea what was happening at the time. It is God himself come amongst us. But a few years ago, I was at an event not unlike this, on a wintry evening, not unlike this, and I was there with my friend Camilla, and afterwards we walked out and we were jumping into the car and we were about to head home. And Camilla said to me, she said, the thing is, Dave, I believe all that stuff about Jesus coming and what he did. I just don't see what it has to do with me. And maybe the most succinct answer to that question, which is a very good question, maybe you're asking, what does this have to do with me? is wrapped up in the words we heard from those opening verses of the account of Jesus' life written by John that we read earlier. After that familiar bit about the Word becoming flesh and dwelling amongst us, John said in verse 12, "But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." That in receiving this child, in believing in him, in trusting him, you do not just find God, but you actually find yourself. And you find yourself with the right to become a child of God. That is why the angels were singing about peace on earth. Because they were articulating in a kind of strange way what Augustine articulated. You have made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. And this tiny child born in the middle of nowhere 2,000 years ago is an opportunity for us to find rest in the God who we have been made to know. That is the kind of news that Christians for centuries have thought is joyful, is worth singing about and is worth celebrating. And so that's what we're going to do in a moment, singing one of those famous joyful Christian hymns. We're going to sing Joy to the World. But as we do that, let me just leave you with saying maybe this is a Christmas where it is not just a repeating of old ancient stories, but this is a Christmas where God really does want to get to know you. And if that's the case, then you are able to sing this, not just this song joyfully, but why not walk away from here this evening in the same way that the shepherds walked away at the end of that passage that we read about them earlier, when they walked away from having met Mary and her tiny child, and they walked away rejoicing because of all that God had done. That invitation is open to you as well. It's been great to be with you this evening. Thank you for coming and joining in our carol service.